Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. If there's anyone here in the audience who would like to address the council, please fill out a speaker card and submit it to staff, and we'll gladly entertain your questions and concern. Again, welcome. If I can have everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'd like to call, this meeting's now been called to order. Madam City Clerk, if we can have a roll call, please.
Ms. DiGiovanni?
Present.
Ms. Manalo?
Present.
Dr. Rod?
Present.
Mr. Sylvester?
Present.
Mr. Buenaventura?
Excused.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam City Clerk. Okay, I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes for the meeting of October 28, 2019.
Move to approve the minutes for the regular meeting of October 28, 2019, and the special meeting of November 12, 2019. Both of those, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, with that being said, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, minutes have been approved. Next item is the approval of the agenda for tonight.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you.
Second.
First and a second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda.
Chair, Vice Mayor, I'd like to
Yes.
pull item number 2, please.
Number 2, okay. Anything else?
No, that's it, for me.
Thank you, Madam DiGiovanni. And I'd like to pull item number 6 and item number 3.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I'd like to pull item number 7, please.
Number 7.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Okay, so what I'm hearing, with the exception of items 2, 3, 6, and 7, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve
We got a
consent
first,
agenda.
and we got a second.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we'll begin with item number 2. Ms. DiGiovanni, please.
Yes, I like to, this has to do with the Daly City, with our Library Association, and if they would come up, because this has to do with our money that they're going to be giving us to our library. This is our Executive Director, Victoria.
Oh.
Hi, thank you for having us. We are really excited to present this grant, and we have our new DCPLA president for 2020, Rosie Tejada, here to tell you what this is about.
Welcome. Congratulations.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Rosie Tejada, the newly elected president of DCPLA. You know me from my work in the community and as a board member for the Jefferson Union High School District. First of all, I wish to give my deepest condolences to Vice Mayor Sylvester and his family
Thank
for
you.
your immense loss.
Thank you.
So
Appreciate that. Thank you so much.
So very sorry for you. So esteemed council members, I'm delighted to present a grant of $12,575 to the Daly City Public Libraries. Wow. So this will go toward purchasing a tabletop 3D carving machine for the Idea Lab at the Ceremony Main Library. And this is a fun way for children to find their inner engineer and create and design things that they can actually hold in their own hands. And with a generous grant from the town of Colma, we're establishing what we like to call a Lucky Day collection. And these are extra copies of popular titles that usually have long wait lists, and this collection will be offered on a first-come, first-served basis. And it's meant for visitors who like to drop into the library, browse, and if they see something they like right away, maybe they'll come back over and over again. So again, thank you for your support as always, and we look forward to continuing to work with you. partner with you to maintain our libraries, to keep them vital for our community. Thanks again.
Thank you, President Tejada now, and our Executive Director, and Bill Lex out in the audience. It's very exciting because now we can move forward with all the projects that we've been looking forward to for our community, so I really appreciate all your hard work.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yes, Mr. Vice Mayor. I just want to say congratulations on becoming president, and thank you for your amazing work as executive director. Hearing what you are offering to young people around the Idea Lab is essential, as we know that libraries are the place that young people go to, and finding that innovation and making sure there's technology within the libraries that reaches youth that may not have access. I mean, that's pretty phenomenal. And every year as you all come in and give back is huge. So thank you so much for your dedication to public libraries. I know that it's intergenerational as well, and really a place for community. So I really want to thank you both for your hard work and for all of your board members.
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Rod.
Thank you again. Congratulations to you, Rosie, being new executive director. I just want to echo my fellow colleagues in terms of providing the tools and imaginative, tangible instruments they can use for knowledge and expression. And you know how everything's getting more and more expensive nowadays, and the technological divide is getting more huge. But I think with these little small wins, it closes the gap in a way where people can have it in terms of access. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Rosie. I'm just amazed. So many things are going on with the library, especially over the years in Victoria. All the work that you've done and the hard work and energy that goes into the libraries and what happens there. A lot of, I've heard of, for the young people, what about us old people? Now, did you say carding machine?
Carving machine, 3D carving machine.
Printer, it's like a printer.
I'm glad you made that clear. Because basically you
Thrown
can,
by the Idea Lab.
yeah, you can basically submit, I guess, some code and it will actually, like say a cup, and it will actually make one of these cups in 3D.
Right.
The reason why I asked, because I've been looking for a place to get these things to lock the seats in my car. And you have to go to one of them machines and they'll draw it up. So I'm glad to see that our libraries will have it. Thanks to the generous donations of everyone, I can't wait. So not only young folks are going to use it, but I'm going to use it too. So, but again, thank you for everything that you do. And that's what makes this city great, because of folks such as you and your staff and all the staff at the libraries and the generous donors out there in the audience. And Mr. Lex, it's good to see you as well, because I know you've been a part for a long time. Thank you, and thank you.
Thank you.
All right, shall we continue down the consent items that have been pulled, or do we approve them one by one? I think we approve. So with. Okay, we'll do it at the end. Okay. Next, moving on is item number 3. I had requested to pull item number 3. I had a couple of questions on that, and looks like we have Mr. Curran. Mr. Curran, please. Thank you. If I can find my notes.
Good evening, Vice Mayor Sylvester, members of the City Council. Item number 3, for those of you at home wondering, seeking authorization for the city manager to execute an agreement with the Brisbane Elementary School District that would allow the Department of Library and Recreation Services to provide an after-school youth recreation program at Panorama School for kindergartners up through 5th grade. We provide staff on site at the school. At dismissal, they're escorted into the room where we provide the program. The program consists of homework, snack, some physical activity of some sort supervised, and other enrichment programs, for cooking and music and those types of things. We've been on the campus at Panorama School for many, many years. The previous agreement was very outdated and included things that we weren't doing anymore. So at the request of the school district, they drafted a new agreement. It went back and forth a few times, and The agreement before you does have one glaring error, and that is the term.
Item number
There
14.
was no termination date on the previous agreement,
Right.
which was a flaw because we actually had to go through some extra steps to nullify that agreement so that we could start a new one. And the placeholder that was used has the date of 2007, and that is incorrect, obviously. The term we're proposing would be 5 years, commencing this year, from the point that the Brisbane Elementary School District Board of Education approves it, and which we expect in early, I believe the next meeting is December 11th.
Okay.
Just to be clear, we are on the school now, so this is an updated agreement to replace the old one.
Thank you, Mr. Kern. I guess you answered one of the concerns I had, and that was item number 14 for the term of the agreement. The other item I had was item number 12 in the contract, which indicates non-discrimination. And it looks like the typical language is there where it's open to everyone regardless of race, ancestry, sex, creed, color, and et cetera. But yet, whereas in the document that I read, it says it's only for the students at Panorama School. So my question was, is this open to others who don't attend Panorama School?
It is intended for the students at Panorama, and I'll defer to Rose on the legality of the non-discrimination clause, the standard clause that I think both parties
Standard.
agree to. So we can't discriminate on the participants from the school.
Okay.
It is intended for the students enrolled at Panorama School.
Okay. Well, I've seen the program at Panorama School, and I think it's an excellent program, especially for after school and to provide sort of childcare. And I'm just hoping sometime in the future we can extend this throughout other schools in Daly City as well. And there probably is, but I just wanted to get that clarification. That's all I needed. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very
Curran.
much.
Is there any other questions on this matter for Mr. Curran? Okay, great. Thank you so much. We'll move on to item number 6 that I've requested to be pulled, and this is approving red light camera photo enforcement program contract renewal. Good evening, Chief.
Good evening, Vice Mayor, council members.
Go ahead, Chief.
So this is a request to approve a contract renewal for our red light camera program with Redflex Traffic Systems. We've been in contract with Redflex since 2007. It's time to renew that contract, and that's the purpose of my being here today. We have 4 red light camera enforcement locations in Daly City. Redflex has been great the entire time we've had them in terms of making sure we are complying with all California laws related to red light cameras, and we would like to continue that relationship that we have with them now. For the fiscal impact, this should be a cost-neutral program. Sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't, and some of that responsibility falls on us, and we're aware of that. We've made some changes to try and improve that for this foreseeable future in this next contract. I'm here to answer any questions you might have. I also have a representative from Redflex here if there's something that I can't answer.
Thank you, Chief. I do understand the benefits of the red light camera photo enforcement system. I also know that other cities has had some problems with red light enforcement and these particular systems, and I'm just wondering if such has applied to Daly City as well, because some of the other cities have decided to take them out and stop using them.
The primary issue that's come up with other cities is the timing of the yellow light. Our Streets and Engineering Division does a great job of making sure that our red lights are certified every single year. So when that question comes up in court, we're prepared to provide those certification documents. And up to now, we have not had to go back and refund any money as other cities have had to do.
Okay? Do the cameras that take the pictures, are they able to capture, say, accidents as a result of violation of 21-453A?
Yes, we have also been fortunate to be able to use the cameras for a couple of other uses. One would be capturing collisions that occur at those intersections, and they've been beneficial when one driver alleges one thing and the other driver alleges something different. We've also used those cameras to capture crimes in terms of somebody committing a crime in Daly City and running through a red light camera controlled intersection, and we're able to retrieve that license plate and try and identify the offender.
Could you tell us the location of those cameras, Chief?
They are, first one is Hickey and Gillert. Second one is Junipero, Serra, and San Pedro. Third one is Junipero, Serra, and Washington. And the fourth one is John Daly and Poncetta.
John Daly and Poncetta. Okay, so we don't have one at John Daly and JS.
No, that is a Caltrans-controlled intersection, and we haven't had much luck trying to work with them on that.
Thank you, Chief. I do understand the benefits because when folks see these, that's why I asked the locations, so that when folks see these and they drive in these locations, they tend to be a little extra careful and subsequently reduce the propensity of running a red light. So thank you so much for the information, and I guess that covers it. Does anybody else have any questions for the Chief?
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you very much.
All right, sir. All right, the last item that we pulled on the consent agenda is item number 7, and that's Councilmember Manalo, setting time and place of public hearing regarding formation of a small business commission.
Yes, Mr. Vice Mayor. I pulled this item on the consent because I really wanted to be able to say thank you to the staff who worked on this item, creating a small business commission in Daly City. The premise is to support our small businesses in our community. We have so many of them that are in our community, and if we can have their voices at the table. We have not had a small businesses commission, and so it's providing the small local businesses an opportunity to have a voice. Number 2, also to see what enhancements we can do economically within the corridors that we have in Daly City. We have many amazing restaurants, we have many amazing small businesses, but how do we continue to support them in the city of Daly City? And so I'm extremely excited that now we do have our economic development specialist, Mr. Brandon Phipps, and I think that we have good things ahead of us in the city of Daly City. And thank you, Director Mothershead, and also I know that City Attorney Zimmerman was working on this, and City Manager Maltby. This is something that I think will help us in general with our whole community to support our small businesses, and I'm excited to see what lies ahead. So I just wanted to say thank you for that work.
Thank you, Councilmember Manalo. I'll have to concur.
Me too.
It gives me great pleasure to sit on that committee with Councilmember Manalo. I know this is something she's been looking forward to for all these years. And of course, our city manager, Ms. Maltby, who really pushed this through. So thank you all. Staff has done an outstanding job as we try to iron out all the kinks and ensure representation throughout the gamut of many of those in our city, especially those who conduct business. Council Member DiGiovanni, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just want to say thank everybody for that work, and that there will be a public hearing on this, and that'll be, what's the date, in January, Councilmember Manalo, I believe, on this, so the public will be able to weigh in and also help guide this process as well. So we look forward to much growth and in a positive manner, and let the people themselves be the ones, the community, to drive what they want to see in our communities. So thank you very much to all of you.
All right. That is the end of the consent agenda. So with items 2, 3, 6, and 7, I'll entertain a motion to approve these last remaining items on the consent agenda.
Motion to approve consent items on the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a first and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, consent agenda is approved. All right, the next item on the, wow, did we jump to number 12 already? Wow, we should have. Okay, is adopting a resolution to adjust parking fines. And with that, we'll have Mr. Birch and Captain Christensen.
Hello, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening,
All right.
Vice Mayor and Council.
All right.
So I will be brief. I'm Tim Birch. I'm with the Finance Department. Basically, it's been almost 10 years since we made any adjustments to parking fines in Daly City. What we've done as of late was compare our parking fines to those of other cities in San Mateo County. So what you see before you in attachments A and B are recommended parking fines for Daly City that basically, in almost every case, bring us in line with other county jurisdictions. We're hoping that by adopting a resolution to bring us in line with other county jurisdictions, that we will be making the issuance of parking citations a more effective tool in dealing with the challenging parking issues that we have. So I'm here for any questions that you may have.
I'll defer to my colleagues first while I look for it, because I didn't have it here in the staff report. Oh, great. Oh, perfect. I see the work that has been done here. I think it would have been good to see the percentages of an increase. I guess what I'm seeing here is dollar amounts that these fines will go up. But I get it. I get it. Captain Christensen.
Yes.
I don't see anything pertaining to vehicle code moving violations. Will that be considered in the future as well? 21,453, 22,450, or 22,350?
In relation to parking citations, those are moving violations.
I know, sir.
Okay.
Will we also consider moving violations in the past?
As
'Cause
far as increasing the fines.
increasing those, because I've heard a lot of folks complain about making U-turns on Southgate in front of the library and endangering pedestrians. Have we thought about looking into that as well?
If I understand correctly, the fee schedule associated to those moving violations
By the
is
state?
through, state and county.
All right.
Mr. Vice Mayor?
Yes,
Yeah.
Councilmember DiGiovanni.
Thank you. I just wanted, we've already reviewed it, but I wanted to say that I know that this took a lot of work, and that I appreciate the fact that we are now, so that people know in our community that we're on the right track and we're trying to catch up. This is not anything that anybody has overstated on the fees. It's just that it has to be cost effective for our staff and for our city. So I appreciate the work that both of you have done in such an intensive, a lot of work. So I really appreciate it. And it feels good that we're moving forward.
Can I ask who precipitated this?
As far as who did all the heavy lifting on this, sir?
No, who decided to finally get us up to the 21st century? Okay, I get it.
Take the credit.
Outstanding, because, it's constantly spoken of that Daly City is in a structural deficit. And maybe this is one of the reasons, out of many. And I think this will help tremendously. And the other bright side of the coin is, as you made mention before, maybe this might reduce parking congestion and parking violations. Thank you. All right. Anything else from other council members?
Just want to say thank you
okay.
for the work on this.
And I just want to say, I think it's fair. You put a price comparison to the city and county of San Francisco. I've had my numerous affairs with parking in San Francisco, even picking up my kids and stuff. And I think it's a pretty fair adjustment Thank you.
Thank you very
Still
much.
lower.
Yeah.
Yeah, our averages were associated to San Mateo County. We
Is
just
that
threw the
okay?
reference in of San Francisco so you could see the discrepancy between
Gotcha.
the counties, but we focused on San Mateo County.
Wow. This is a lot of work. Okay,
It was primarily done by police department staff, sir.
okay. Oh, let me see. We have, I'm sorry, Madam City Attorney. Let's see, I do have some cards. Let me,
Motion to open the
Okay.
public hearing.
well, I'd like to entertain a motion to open the public hearing, but I don't have any cards on this matter.
The
Okay.
motion to close.
Okay, so we have a motion to open by Councilmember Manalo. Was there a second to open?
Second.
Second by D. Giovanni. Being that I have no cards, Councilmember Manalo made a motion to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Second? Okay, so the motion's been, so the hearing has been opened and closed. So now we move on to approval. Okay? Thank you. By the record. Right? Thank you, Madam City Attorney. So, on the matter, thank you, Captain Christensen and
Thank you.
Mr. Birch. So, on the matter to adopt a resolution to adjust parking fees, we'll need a motion to adopt. Is there a motion to adopt?
Motion to adopt parking fees?
A first? Is there a second? I'll second it. Roll call, please.
Ms. D. Giovanni?
Aye.
Ms. Manalo?
Aye.
Dr. Rod?
Aye.
Mr. Sylvester?
Aye. Thank you, Madam City Clerk, and the motion is passed. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the introduction of an ordinance adding Chapter 5.92 to the Daly City Municipal Code and adoption of the short-term rental fees. And we have Ms. Morales. Good evening. I don't know why. I don't know why. It's not on this, on,
I wonder, it's not, we'll have to look.
because I didn't.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Carmelissa Morales, and I'll be introducing the proposed short-term rental ordinance. And since we've had a few meetings on this, I just wanted to give some background, explain a little what short-term rentals are, in case we may have forgotten. What is a short-term rental? It is a home or individual rooms within a home that is rented to an individual for a period of 30 days or less. So this proposed ordinance would not affect long-term rentals. And as of October 8th, 2019, we've identified 485 short-term rental units in Daly City, and a total of 702 active listings on various platforms. And some more background information. In April 2018, the City Council convened an 11-member short-term rental task force. And in that task force, there were 9 residents, one of them being a short-term rental operator, as well as some representatives from other organizations. And the task force did recommend that we require owner occupancy, prohibit short-term rentals on properties with ADUs, which are accessory dwelling units, and limit the number of days a homeowner can use their home as a short-term rental. On March 2019, the City Council had a study session where the task force's findings were discussed and an overview of the market in Daly City was presented, and we were directed to develop a short-term rental ordinance. On October 14th, 2019, it was the first meeting where we introduced the ordinance, and after gathering some public input, staff was directed to review the public comments and revise the ordinance. The discussion was continued to October 28th, 2019. On October 28th, 2019, it was continued to today's meeting due to some other items on the agenda that took priority. As for the ordinance development process, we did retain host compliance for consulting and data collection services, so they helped us identify short-term rentals currently in Daly City, as well as provided some feedback on our ordinance and some guidance. We also reviewed some ordinances from other cities and spoke to a couple of staff from other cities to gather some feedback. We met with Airbnb to discuss voluntary collection agreements to really understand how that would work with Daly City, and they're currently reviewing ours. or our TOT, or transient occupancy tax ordinance. And on 2 occasions, so for the October 14, 29 meeting and tonight's meeting, we did do public noticing. That was via mail, email, and also online. And I'll go, the next couple slides, we'll go over the public comments that were received. We actually received several, both from people who were in attendance at these public hearings, as well as via email or mail. And this is just a summary of what staff has gathered based on what we received. For example, benefits include contributing to Daly City's economy, and the flexibility of having a short-term rental versus a long-term rental. Some concerns that were raised were the nuisances to residents, the conversion of long-term rentals, and a lot of short-term rentals becoming hotels and hostels. Included in some of the public comments were recommendations that were considered during the rewriting of the ordinance. There was a recommendation to eliminate the owner occupancy requirement, but also a recommendation to keep it. There was a suggestion to increase the day limits for unhosted stays, require permission from the property owner if they were to operate a tenant-operated short-term rental, and adding a grandfather clause for existing short-term rentals. And among other suggestions, it was to keep the first draft of the ordinance. And here is just a slide that shows the ordinance objectives. It hasn't changed since the first draft, but just to highlight a few, we do want to preserve long-term housing stock, protect affordable housing, and also generate some revenue for the city. So the next couple of slides, I'll go into what we've revised in the ordinance. So there was the definition for host has been revised, so now we include tenant. So now the property owner and the tenant can become a host. We do require that the tenant submit a notarized authorization form from the property owner if they were to operate the short-term rental. There is no change to the primary residency requirement, so you would still have to be residing in the unit for at least 9 months. And we did want to emphasize that the tenant and the owner would be responsible for any nuisance violations, not just the tenant or not just the owner. As for the permitted property types, we still have single-family residences, mostly residential properties, but we have included duplexes and properties with multiple rental units, so apartment buildings. And there has been no change to the prohibited types. So if you have an ADU in your property, you're not permitted to operate a short-term rental, and as well as affordable housing units. And it was further clarified that vacation rentals are not permitted because they're not owner-occupied. Regarding the question about the local coastal program amendment, staff did discover that we do have to have our local coastal program certified with the new amendment, so that will happen after the ordinance has been adopted. As for the rest of the ordinance, it's pretty much been the same. There hasn't been a change to the unhosted stay limits or the hosted stay limits. It's still 90 days for unhosted stay limits, which means that the host won't be present during the guest's visit, and no limit on hosted stays where the owner or the tenant will be living on the property at the same time. We have also maintained the only one booking per property per day, so this prevents things such as hostels, hotels, etc. And we are not requiring additional parking for the short-term rentals. We just require that the host provide on-site parking. This should be the last slide on the revised ordinance, but there is no change to the permit requirements. You're still required to have a short-term rental permit and a business license. You're still required to pay transient occupancy taxes, and both the permit and the business license will expire on every September 30th and require renewal. And lastly, failure to comply, this has not changed. It may lead to ineligibility or revocation of the permit or business license, and we will be providing an amnesty period depending on when the ordinance gets adopted. For the proposed fees, there is no change. It's based on an hourly rate and what we're currently requiring for a business license, and depending on how long it takes, we might bill it on a per hour basis. And for the environmental assessment, we determined it's not a project as defined by CEQA. And here, the next two slides are the findings that staff have made to support the adoption of the ordinance. So in conclusion, staff recommends that the City Council introduce the ordinance adding Chapter 5.92 to the Daly City Municipal Code, adopting regulations for short-term rentals, adopt resolution approving the proposed short-term rental fees, and affirm the environmental assessment. I'm available if you have any questions. We also have Ulrich Minzer with Host Compliance, who's been assisting us with the process, who can answer questions.
All right, thank you, Ms. Morales. I would like to canvass my colleagues to see if you have any questions for staff from what you've heard thus far. That also includes bringing up the person who has been assisting as well to answer any questions before we open it up to public hearing. Any questions? Okay, hearing none. Well, I do have a couple of questions. I see the change from host versus tenant. So basically, in this particular case, they would probably be one and the same. Basically, somebody's on the site. Is that correct?
Yeah, so in both, you could be a property owner or you could be a tenant. That just means that you live on the property for at least 9 months out of the year. You could do an unhosted stay, which means you would be there, or you would not be there for during the guest's stay, but you're limited to 90 days out of the year. And if you were to do a hosted stay, you would technically still be on the property during their stay. So you have two options.
Okay, that was my next question. So the tenant, I guess one who is responsible, can be off of the property no more than 90 days for unhosted stay, right?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct. And that's a total of 90 days. So
Okay.
you're limited to 30 days or less per guest stay. So they can stay up, the same guest can stay at the short-term rental up to 30 days. So technically, if you wanted to do 30-day stays, then you'd only be able to do 3.
So this is a hypothetical. So if the tenant signs or they negotiate an agreement for a party to stay there for 89 days, that does not come under short-term rental. It's now considered a long-term rental.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right. Great. Councilmember DiGiovanni.
Yeah, just one quick one before we open up to the public, if you don't mind. So I know that we said that the host versus tenant, that the tenant, if they occupy it as the main person, they can be held liable as well. But how can you actually hold legally if we needed to get hold of the owner, if there's an issue, like an arrenda or whatever, and we need to get hold of that owner, the tenant cannot legally be held liable, I don't think, or how would we rectify that? They can't be held for the same as an owner.
Yes, that's correct. So ultimately, it will be the property owner's responsibility if there's something that happens at the short-term rental. They will be required to provide a local responsible contact person that the short-term rental guests can contact, or neighbors. If it's something that's after hours, it might have to be something that would be resolved by the police. But if we are open, then they could call the city as well to report the
But ultimately, if it's host occupied, then we need at least know that the owner is there and that the less likelihood of anything that occurred horribly in Orinda or any other places would occur. And that's what the task force recommended, correct?
The task force recommended that that tenants not be able to operate the short-term rental, so it would just be owners. In our proposed ordinance, we are allowing both the tenant and the owner, but the property owner would be the one that is
If we can find
the
them.
responsibility.
Right, because maybe they're out of the country. So that's an issue. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Morales. Any other questions?
So just a point of clarification, Ms. Morales. So if a tenant wanted to go into a short-term rental, do they need to have the property owner's consent?
Yes, so we will be requiring a notarized authorization form, which
Gotcha.
is sort of a higher level of authorization. So it's not just a letter and signed by the owner. It's going to be by a notary, which is what we typically do for things like short-term, or with accessory dwelling units.
Okay.
Interesting. All right. I'll entertain a motion to open up the public hearing at this time.
Actually, could I include one more thing?
Oh, okay.
I mean, this is pretty minor, but I think it's pretty major at the same way. In terms of host, is there a way we can have more of a gender inclusive identity? Because I know it says a dwelling who rents his or her. Can we add they as well? Just as long as they probably don't identify as his or her, just want to,
Yeah, before we were to adopt it, we could revise that.
thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rod. All right. I'll entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
Motion to open public hearing?
Motion, okay. Second?
Second.
Second, all right. I have a few cards here. When I call your name, please feel free to come on up. I'm going to call 3 names so that the next person can prepare. We'll start off with Mr. Tim Cannon. And next we have Arthur Scheckman and a Ritz Prince. So, Mr. Cannon, good evening, sir.
Good evening. Short-term rental, I was on the committee for a while. We talked about adopting it after sort of shadowing San Francisco. But one thing that didn't come up often enough that should be noted, that every time you have a short-term rental, you're taking a house out of housing stock. And we have a small management company. We manage a lot of property in Daly City. We have a lot of single families. Those single families are occupied by 2 and 3 generations. And the older generation are usually retired, almost have no pension or small income. They're not living with their kids and grandkids because they want to. They're there because they have to be there. And when we take a house out of the housing stock and make it a short-term rental, 90 days, whatever it is, you're taking, potentially forcing somebody to go live in Fresno or Bakersfield or somewhere where they might be able to afford to live. And I have nothing against Airbnb. The house next door to me is an Airbnb house. The people that stay there are nice people. The owner of the house is a nice person. And another issue that I notice your fees, the single-family homes that we do rent in Daly City as single families, our license fee is considerably low for a tax. And when you look at the fees you're charging Airbnb, where their income is considerably greater than what our property owners are getting for rent, those fees should be higher. They shouldn't be as low as they are. Because just a regular mom and pop are paying more than that for a rental house. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cannon. Mr. Arthur Scheckman? Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Vice Mayor and the council. Hello. Last meeting, the occupancy per unit was brought up, and someone asked how come some of these short-term rental homes with 3 bedrooms and 2 baths have an occupancy of 10 people or even more sometimes. The truth of the matter is the cost of living in the Bay Area has forced people to occupy a single family home with multiple generations of family members. And even though classified as a single family home, they are very much unofficially multifamily homes with sometimes up to 10 permanent residents with illegal ADUs and other makeshift rooms created to accommodate as many family members as possible. Another issue was brought up last meeting regarding STR guests adding to the parking crisis. Short-term rental guests typically come in one large van that goes into the driveway or takes up one parking spot. Rarely do STR guests come on multiple cars, whereas a single-family home with 8 to 10 permanent residents may have anywhere from 2 to 8 cars. Excess garbage and curb appeal of STR properties was brought up as an issue. However, it is arguable that STR properties are some of the most well-maintained and frequently cleaned properties inside and out I've ever seen. Who would want to stay in a bad-looking or dirty home while on vacation? STRs are not the reason housing prices or rental prices have gone up in our area. The booming tech market and overall booming market has been the cause, with Bay Area salaries at an all-time high. STRs are simply allowing some of us that don't have tech salaries to be able to purchase a house and rent it in a new way without having to have the same tenants for many consecutive years while being able to check on the property as often as we would like to. STRs are a way for the city to collect a hotel-type tax on every single stay. Why limit property owners on how many days a year they can contribute to the city's income? Noise and parties came up as an issue. Good hosts should not be penalized because of the handful of bad hosts that don't communicate well with their guests. I'm not done, but...
Well, go ahead and finish up, please.
Cities like Denver, along with others, have created a 3-strike rule. So if a property is repeatedly being a nuisance of the neighborhood, they will lose their ability to host for 1 year. Please don't take away what should be our basic rights as property owners. Thank you.
All right, we have Mr. Prince. The next three will be Sylvia Cole, Peter Chang, and Yan Lee. Mr. Prince, good evening, sir.
Well, thank you, council members, and thank you to the team that's been doing a lot of work. I'm sure it's kind of a surprise to you to see this many of us show up to give you feedback right now. But for many of us, we just learned of this recently. And thank you for the public notice that you put out and that brought us here. And what I wanted to tell you is a lot of echoing what this gentleman just said. If you went out and you converted those 458 units back into long-term rental, let me assure you, it would not go back into generational housing. The market in Daly City is very hot. That means it's going to be going to tech workers. It's going to be going to the people who can afford that. It's not going to really address some of the other intrinsic issues that are there. That's number one. Number two, I manage my rental for in-laws who can't speak English. They speak Mandarin and Cantonese and 7 other languages, but I'm the person who's got to be the customer service for those individuals. And my in-laws would be back doing their old jobs in their retirement if they didn't have this additional income. This is one property. Many of the people who are here tonight who are going to talk to you about this, they lived in Daly City and they're living in Daly City now. And this is their one property where they're doing this to make that additional income, to be able to afford to live in this area. That's why it's critical to us. I think that when you look at the total number of housing units available, focusing in on us and trying to make us pay the penalty for the severe lack of housing, we're a drop in the bucket. You guys know we need to develop a lot more housing, affordable housing in Daly City. In the area that I'm in, Vendome Avenue, I have 6 other houses around me. They all have 10 cars. That's 60 cars in 5 houses. I have pictures. So with that, my people have 1. In terms of consideration, I would like you to understand that this is going to put more cars back on the street if we end these units. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prince. All right, we have a Sylvia Cole. The next is Peter Chang and a Yan Lee. Good
Hi,
evening.
council members. My name is Sylvia Coe, and I'm actually the police commissioner at Broadmoor, and it's a privilege to be able to attend this meeting and get to meet you. I am here also because I've heard about the short-term rental ordinance that came into discussion. We were actually out of town in October, and coming back into town, I learned that there was this meeting today. And I do feel my main concern of just wanting to speak with you before you today is just how quickly the timeline of this is going into effect, considering that this week is actually Thanksgiving week, and there's this amount of turnout. I would imagine that if it was not even on a holiday week, what kind of voice that you would hear from, your residents, and these are your constituents. And so my main concern is just the timeline of this. Are we really considering all the voices in our city? Because this gentleman brought up really good points about parking, and as I understand, it might go into effect January 1st. So I'd love to hear more on that amnesty period of like a whole year, what that looks like. We're November 25th right now, and before you know it, January will be here. And so you're expecting 420 plus homes having to respond to that within a short amount of time. And the economics that would impact a household. I just hope that all of that is being considered. I understand that there was a long study that was done last year, but I don't really see much of the STR hosts or homeowners being represented in that study. I believe there was only one individual in that case study that was part of the STR. So I just plead you to really consider all aspects and also consider the timeline of this is a main concern to me.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Peter Chang.
Hi, Vice Mayor. Hi, council members. I really just want to echo what this gentleman said. I completely agree with everything he said, especially, a lot of families are like me. My wife is a teacher and I'm an administrator, so we don't really make much income. Our dream is to, own a house. And one of the, we're fortunate to have like some roommates who could pay rent for us. But, there's some stretches of time where we can't find tenants, and, short-term rental is like a great option to have. And, like with this, like if it's limited to like 90 days, a year, sometimes it's really scary to like, to think that, sometimes we might not be able to afford the house. And, I like to think that, I'm part of the community, but, like I really wouldn't, worried that, I'd be forced out of here, with how high, salaries are nowadays and how high rent is and mortgage. So, that's what I want to say.
Okay, sir, thank you so much. All right, Yan Lee?
Actually, my husband just said a lot.
He said everything? Okay. Thank you. Are you two owners?
Yeah.
Okay, so you own a home?
Yes.
Okay, so for the question for staff, so if you own a home, you're considered a host if you're there and you rent out a room?
You'd be considered a host even if you were not present during the this guest's stay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next three is Mr. Benjamin Butler, and then Anna McCrath, and Margaret Ryan. So, Mr. Butler, good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah.
Vice Mayor and Councilman. I sent a letter. The last version that I had most of the things that was there, and one of them, it said that there can't be weddings, for example. And I understand it shouldn't be a wedding destination, but if I have someone there short-term and they just fall in love and would get married, the state can't stop that. So I think that needs to be adjusted. There's a hold harmless clause inside there too, and under California law, the city's already protected. There's a lot of things in this law that's pretty much just making it impossible to do a short-term rental. I have a short-term rental here, which is my home in Daly City, and I have a short-term rental in San Francisco, which is my primary home. I believe this should be available for people who also don't live in the unit. I haven't had any complaints. Before that, I used to rent to college students, and they had like 5, 6 cars. Now, my tech people that come, my construction workers that come, they have no cars. They use Uber. Sometimes there's one big pickup truck. So it's been better for the neighborhood, and like the gentleman said, which who I know, and he can attest, the housing is much better now. It's better maintained. I mean, I have a maid that comes now. With the college students, I didn't see my place till like a year later, and then it's a whole other different world. And all the things you're trying to do and the goals there, you can say the same thing for long-term tenants. I mean, who's on site to do anything when I had students there? No one cared about all those things. No one cared about parking. No one cared about parties. No one cared about any of that stuff. So to make it something special because someone is staying 29 days, I think it's just not fair when that standard is not done for, if I have someone there for 5 years, no one cares who the contact person is. No one cares if they have a say in the community or anything like that. So those are some of my primary concerns. I think this should be studied more because the group that you had there, I mean, it wasn't enough. The consultant that you have, I'm familiar with them. They're severely biased. Again, I'm very active with this in San Francisco. I've met with Airbnb many times. I think if we're going to be fair, you should see the other side because what they do, they're specifically designed to limit the housing rights of people on homes. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Anna McCrath, and then we have a Margaret Ryan. Ms. McCrath, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, council members. What I want to do is, obviously I do understand the challenges with the housing stock, and I really understand the cost of living in Daly City. It is definitely the home that I have named my forever home and would like to be able to afford to live here forever. It is a primary residence, and I realise that the current recommendation is that the short-term rental regulations say unhosted stays for a maximum of 90 days per year, which I totally understand, no issue with that. Because unhosted stays are 90 days, it would seem that obviously there will be 90 days that I think that it would make sense to allow 2 bookings per night for only those 90 days. Because the California coastal zone, which my property is in, wants people to have access to the coast. And so if I go somewhere and I'm not in the building, then that means where I'm living, my living space is empty. And so for only those 90 days that I'm not in my hosted space, it just feels reasonable that it would be possible to have 2 bookings per day. So that would support the goals of the California coastal zone, and it would also support a homeowner that's looking to pay their mortgage. And, my wife has a business in Daly City that we have a business license. It's a home license. We pay our taxes, we pay our fees. We have a business license for our rental property, which we pay our taxes, we pay our fees on those. There are a number of taxes. The gentleman mentioned that it's very low, but there are a number of taxes that you are imposing: the business license, the permit, and the occupancy tax as well, which totally willing to pay, but it is not a small amount based upon all the fees that are associated with having a home. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Margaret Ryan. After Ms. Ryan, we have a Stella Stark, a Zena Gutowski, and a Patricia Heller. Good evening, ma'am.
Good
Ms.
evening.
Ryan.
Good evening. That was my wife speaking, so obviously I agree with everything she just said. Really quickly, I want to say thank you about this small business initiative. I do have a business in Daly City. I hope there's going to be some level of representation for gay people, which we do have a voice and we'd love to have it heard. But I thank you for having that initiative, especially as a woman. The second piece I wanted to share, again, is about this is our home. And to me, it still kind of blows my mind that you're even coming up with anything dictating what I do within my home. It's my castle. And I understand you want to take as much as you can from percentages of taxes, etc. We live in a community, we want to support that community, and I love this community, so I'm totally there with you. So for me, I think just please take into consideration, these are our homes, and for us to be able to rent out short-term people, and truly, when I heard you say before about short-term rentals, those people are making a nuisance of our neighbourhood, that's not my personal experience. It really isn't. They're like us. We want to go on vacation, In your own vacation, you just want a nice place. You've chosen to go to a suburb. You're not in the city. So you're in someone's home. It's like your own home. So to me, I think just make it a little bit more personal here. These are our homes, we want to rent them out. Allow us to do that, hold us accountable to a standard that is fair and reasonable. And as a community, let's have everything rather than not this or not that. Let's just have it all together so we build a stronger revenue model with people who can afford to live here. So thank you.
Thank you so much. That was Ms. Ryan. Stella Stark. And then we have Zena Gutowski next. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. Thanks for having me, Vice Mayor and council members. I'm actually speaking on behalf of my aunt and uncle, Linda and Joe Lighthizer. They have sent their notes to you as well. They have provided me a place, I'm their niece, to live for the past almost 6 years now, and we do Airbnb upstairs. I've been the on-site tenant there for the past 6 years, and it's been a wonderful experience. They've been able to provide me with a place to live here to chase my dreams because I'm in love with the Bay Area, and a safe place for many tourists and their families to come and visit San Francisco. My biggest concern kind of comes with echoing the rush of the timeline. A 9-month amnesty period doesn't quite seem like enough because this is, again, our homes and a business, and, you know, if my aunt and uncle have to sell this home, we're gonna have to, you know, put this on the market, figure out how and where I'm gonna be displaced in the Bay Area, and losing that property would be a big fall on them financially since they are retired. My other concern comes into the well-established guests. My aunt and uncle have been super hosts. They've talked to their neighbors, and been very, very good hosts. So I feel like the opportunity to grandfather in people whose specific flexibility don't coincide this proposed structure of the regulations to be admitted, because a one-size-fits-all, one rule to rule them all doesn't necessarily fit for everybody. And if there's been a host who's had a great track record and hasn't had any complaints, I don't see anything wrong with them, you know, continuing to be able to do what they do. And just wanted to talk about the small businesses. One of my favorite parts about being an on-site host is to encourage people to go to the small businesses in Daly City. I'm happy to recommend them, and I feel our short-term rentals go to those short-term, or those small businesses more than other tenants do. So that's everything I'd like to say.
All right, thank you. Okay, Zena Gutowski. And then we have...
Trying to get out the hits. Thank you for allowing public input. This is going to be very unpopular with you people. Everybody here is concerned about financial and what it's going to do to the rental market or the real estate. I'm concerned about safety. No one has addressed the fact, I live in the Bay Shore. SFO 101, 280 are primo targets for a short-term rental, let's say 5 days. One guy comes in, he's bringing a particular component of a bomb. 5 friends all come in, and they have another component of a bomb. And that bomb then, after 5 days, gets disseminated into the population. Short-term rentals scare the hell out of me. I don't feel safe with them. Parties, young boys being stupid, getting drunk, shooting pistols, that's stupid people. But people coming in to do harm to my community, that bothers me, that scares me. And how can we even, how can we prevent that? How can we monitor that? And was I right? Are you all unhappy with what I just said? Absolutely, I think it's insane. Thank you. Well, I'm the only one that addressed it, so there we go. 19 seconds. Next.
Thank you. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, Please show some proper decor. We've given everybody a chance to speak. There are always differing opinions, but as adults, everybody is entitled to speak their mind without any sort of reprisal. Thank you. All right.
Patricia Heller. That's
Oh,
me.
I already gave your card, didn't I?
I am. I heard my name.
Oh,
You ready?
well, you were the last one, but if you, now that you're here,
Well, the last shall be first.
okay. And then after you, we have Rochelle A. Fortier Nawadiba. Okay? All right, Ms. Heller, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. My name's Patricia Heller, and I've been a host here in Daly City for, I think I was actually probably number one of 458 when Airbnb first started operating in this area. And I wanted to say to Margaret, I appreciate your concerns, and I sympathize and I share the idea that this is a scary world. And I wanted to just say something about community is one of the things that I gained from hosting in my home. My husband and I and our daughter moved here in 1994 when Julia was 3 years old. We raised our daughter over there on Pine Haven Drive. She went to Tobias School, and we were really happy to be in this neighborhood of older people, younger people, and we've watched the neighborhood change over the years. But essentially, it's our blocks have been pretty single-family continuity. We've worked really hard at maintaining that sense of community and knowing who's in our neighborhood. 10 years ago, my daughter graduated high school and my husband died. And I was faced with the situation where, what am I going to do? Am I going to stay in this place where I love, where I raised my family, the home that we built together to be our forever home, or am I going to have to go somewhere else? And thank goodness for me, this idea of short-term rental was available to me, and I worked really hard to incorporate that, the structure of the short-term rental into my sense of my obligation to my neighborhood. I have tea parties once a year where I invite all the neighbors to come in and see what's going on in my garden and what's going on in my apartment. And I ask them if they have any questions about the people that they've seen. And I tell them, please let me know if anybody ever bothers you. And to a person, I've had spectacular people come and visit me. Sometimes they bring a car, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they bring their little children, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they come for whatever reason. They might come here at getting ready to settle down in the Bay Area, and they want to see what it's like to live in Daly City. And they get a really, really positive experience at my house. And so I appreciate the work that you've all done in putting this together, and I wanted to mention that I'm really happy that the Small Business Commission is starting up, and it sounds like a really good time to have this particular group of people join in the conversation, because it's a really magnificent community, and it's a magnificent forum to help have this community remain vital and safe.
Thank you, Ms. Heller. All right, the last card I have is Ms. Rochelle.
Right.
Hi.
Or should the end is silent, Vice Mayor. It's Rochelle Valdivia.
Thank you.
I'm very sorry for your loss. I wasn't aware of it, but
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
that to you. I was here last time. Last time I spoke first. This time it looks like I'm going to be speaking last. Refreshing your memories, I am a longtime resident of Daly City. We moved here in 1967. My family is a family home. I'm the second generation that's living in the home. I had the privilege of being able to raise my own children in there after my parents passed away. When I returned home, I'd been living in other places, countries around the country, etc., and came back. And I'm very happy to have been able to give my children the experience of living in Daly City. I'm an attorney. I was a sole proprietor for many years. I practiced immigration law, and but unfortunately, I've had a lot of illnesses since about 2010 when my kids went off to college, and so that definitely affected my ability to apply for retirement. And so this has really been a part of my retirement practice, which I live on the property. I have it's a 4-bedroom home, and I am having such a great experience having people come from just all over the world, and even being able to host people that are here coming to move into the Bay Area that just need a spot for 3 months or 2 months or short term. I had a guy that just moved out that came in on October 15th who found a place in the city and has moved on and started his life in the Bay Area. So there's a lot of good that's really happening here with the short-term rentals. And what concerns me about what's going on is that it's overbroad, and I brought this to your attention when I was here the last time, is that basically you're making the people that are contributing to the community, you're penalizing us when you have, instead of just focusing.
No, go ahead, finish up.
Just
ma'am.
focus on the people that are doing the harm. 3 strikes, you're out, as the gentleman suggested earlier. And we want to have a safe community, and all of us do. And so I just want to point, there's 2 things that really concern me, is the fact that this is overbroad because it's penalizing the do-gooders, but then also the limitation of 1 room for short-term rental. I have children that live, my son works for the State Department, he comes home on home leave, he lives in Africa now, he was living in Islamabad. I have to have a room available for him when they say he can come home. And so and I have another son that lives in Washington, D.C., a daughter that lives in Los Angeles. None of my children live here, they can't afford to live here. But when they come home and they tell me they're coming, if I have someone that's in a long-term rental, where are my children going to stay? So just want to put that in your ear, and I think that's a concern for some others that expressed this last year, is that we need to have the flexibility and use of our own property to be able to accommodate our own needs, and we've been contributing to this community for several years. And as I mentioned last time, I wrote those procedure manuals for the water crisis last time. We had it back in the 70s. I used to work here for the city itself. So we're long-term residents. We care about the community. We all do. We want this to be a safe place, but don't penalize the people that are contributing to the community and making it what it is. Thank you.
I'd like to thank everyone for coming. At this particular time, I have no more cards, and I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing at this time.
Motion to close?
Second?
Second.
Okay, so with that being said, I'll listen to any comments that my colleagues may have. Anyone?
I'll go.
Okay,
Mr.
because
Vice Mayor.
I tell you, once I give my comment, I'm gonna close it off. So, go ahead. In light of my colleagues' courtesy.
Do you want to go first, Mr. Vice Mayor?
Oh no, I'm not gonna go first.
Okay. First and foremost,
Thank
I
you
want to
for
say
asking.
thank you to each and every one of you that come up to the podium and speak your perspective on both perspectives on the dais in front of us. I think it's important to hear from each and every one of you, and you've shared your personal stories as community members, which is extremely important for us to hear. And we understand that it's all unique individual stories that each and one of you have. I mean, from folks that have lived here for generations to maybe folks that have moved into Daly City and just trying to remain in the Bay Area. I hear that. And, just to give everyone some perspective on the ordinance, this hasn't been a very hasty process. I just wanted to let everyone know that there has been, as mentioned by staff, meetings. There was numerous meetings. There was actually a task force that was created. So this process hasn't been a hasty one. We really did our due diligence to get input from community members from every part of the neighborhoods. Like, we asked, can we have this kind of opportunity for people to voice their opinions, and even more so today, right? So it's a continuing piece of voicing your opinion. For me, I think because this is such an important ordinance with the short-term rentals, this is going to be codified within our municipal code. I think it's important to have, and this is my perspective, and I'm only one voice on this council, to have a full council in making this decision. We currently don't have our mayor at the table, and for something this important to our community, where it's around, I understand people that have their property rights. I understand there's people in the audience that want to talk about, maybe for them it's around safety issues. But I don't feel comfortable moving forward without having a full council in making this decision. But that's where I'm at. This is something that will be, as mentioned, codified in our municipal code. But I do respect everyone's time coming here, but this is where I'm at. If there are any other questions, I feel like this process has been not one that I feel like if we wanted to push this along and have this done in a moment where we're trying to just grasp economic benefit, it would have been done. But because we care about your responses and community input, this is why it's been this long process. So that's where I'm at, Mr. Vice Mayor, and I appreciate you giving me the floor.
You got it. Councilmember Manalo, thank you so much. Councilmember DiGiovanni.
Yeah, again, I just want to echo that everyone that comes here, and it is great that we all come with our different experiences, but I wanted to let people know that based even on both sides of the coin, and it's not to penalize anyone, but since the last time as we go across this process, and even though we can't help but ignore, for me, this is just me speaking, I know that these are good people and you have great people in your thing, but since that time we did have the incident in Orinda, we have received video from residents that our police have been called several times over several months to many residences concerning the next door neighbors renting out their Airbnb. Doesn't mean that the people here, and that those people have come over on their properties, sat on their doorsteps, and they're inside with their baby, afraid to go out, and things of that instance. So we have to take into consideration multiple things, and we have received quite a lot of letters, and especially since the Orinda thing. And I would like to know through the city manager as well, I feel like we need a full council for this. And I had asked earlier in the day, because we receive our packet on Friday, according to what our crime reports are in the Airbnb, and it has taken up a lot of our resources for our police officers, for the bad actors. Like, we don't want to penalize the good people, because, we love our community, and Daly City is a special community, but at the same time, we can't ignore the fact that this lady comes here, and I know that she's lived here for numerous years, and as well as some of the people in the audience, and that I don't want people to live in fear. This is not what we want to create, but for the good people as well, we want to make sure that you're able to stay if you live in our city and you need the income, and some people have become widowed or circumstances come up, whether medical or what have you, that we need to take those kind of things and know you're not here to destroy the community. You're not here just for the financial benefit, that you're here to continue living in our city, and you are a valued member of our community. And so I don't want to be ignored. But our mayor is not here. It is a pretty serious issue of balance, and we need to take into consideration. So I support my colleague, Councilmember Manalo, and would like to hear from the other colleagues as to that, because also to clarify the owner occupied versus a host occupied, to make sure that when these things come up, when there are issues of which, when people come to your place, they're great people, right? But you don't even know their backgrounds. I mean, you really don't. I mean, they're probably great people, and it's a continuance, but we want to make sure that even for you, that one instance never happens. We want to make sure that we protect you as well, for anyone in our community. That's a big key issue. With that, I'd like to turn it back to the Vice Mayor and support my member, Justin Manalo.
Thank you, Councilmember Di Giovanni. Before I speak, Dr. Rod, did you have anything?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
This is a very hot topic. And, just to say that, like, right in the, just name it, that's the elephant in the room, right? We have the issues of gentrification, the issues of keeping the integrity of the community. We talk about issues of gentrification, we're bringing in like new income, and that can possibly displace people that can't afford, and people have already voiced it out. But I do understand where a lot of y'all are coming from. There's different contexts, different experiences that, my father is also a property owner. He didn't take the short-term rental route, but he did the long-term rental route. My mom passed away in 2010. He needed to find a way to supplement his income. So I understand that those options that you have to have. But I also understand the intricacies of what is going to come ahead of us. There's some perspectives and studies that say that it doesn't contribute to gentrification, and there's some that do. Some people say that it'll take away the housing stock, right? And a lot of the developers, all they always talk about, it's like, I ask them, so what is it going to take for this housing crisis to make a dent? And they're talking about supply and demand. Oops, sorry. It's about supply and demand. So I'm also concerned with that as well, in terms of finding ways that to keep the housing stock, so that people have opportunities to actually rent, have affordable housing. But my whole important thing is about keeping the integrity of what Daly City is about. Daly City ain't Daly City unless it's about the people. And if it's about the people that creates the identity of this city, we need to sustain that. So there's a lot of things that we have to juggle, but I also want to echo what our colleagues have been saying as well. Like, I feel like since this is a very hot and contested issue, that we need to have a full force, city council to make this decision. I feel like there has to be, I don't know, from my heart, it just feels a little bit kind of rushed. If we're trying to pass something now, or have something here and then try to enforce it by January 1st, feels a little, kind of forced a little. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rod. All right, I'd like to address some of what I've heard this evening. First of all, I'd like to provide some clarification. Daly City convened a task force to discuss this. The folks that participated on the task force met, they talked. Whether it had a cross-section to represent the interest of everyone involved, to include community members, constituents, homeowners, tenants, or even those who utilize Airbnb, I don't know. However, the information that we've heard tonight was as a result of what came out of those task force findings. Why did we have the task force? The task force was because of what they term super houses going up. The task force convened because of the parking issues. So in this ordinance, I have not seen how do we take care of or alleviate those situations. I've heard tonight from a niece who lives in a home. So that particular person, I feel this ordinance would not affect them because she's living there. I've heard from someone who owns a home, a couple that owns a home. So this ordinance for them being in the home would not affect them. I've heard someone say that as a result of a short-term rental, you don't know who's coming into that short-term rental, and perhaps they can be making bombs. Well, that can happen in the long-term rental as well. At times, when council has put something together, and they said, we're going to do this, and I've heard it many times, this is the timeline. Then we hear folks say, well, you're not going fast enough. Well, this has been a long time in the making, folks. And it's not until where the pudding is now on the pie. Don't get me wrong, I appreciate you folks being here, but a lot of noses went out, and we've got to do something. I heard someone says, this is my home. You are absolutely correct. When I try to put myself into your shoes and feel what you feel, I would probably feel the same way. This is my home. I should basically be able to do what I want with my home. But at the same time, community is very, very important because the dynamics do change the community. There is a reason that 58,000 units in San Francisco, talking about housing stock, goes unrented. And when I say unrented, what sort of rent am I talking about? Long-term rentals. Here we are talking about short-term rentals. And then there's the economic aspect of it also, and I do completely understand that as well. I haven't seen any recommendation as to grandfather those who basically has complied, basically those who maintain a clean record. And what about those, when you check the criminal background, who is to say that somebody who's committed a petty theft 3 times, who now has a felony on their record, they cannot do an Airbnb or a short-term rental? That's not fair. We should not be in the business of preventing that as well. There's a difference between short-term versus long-term, and I feel that that has not really been defined yet. What other did I have? Grandfather, timeline for the task force, house of the fees could be higher, and then occupancy. Okay, so we know about the incident that happened in Orinda. Can you say that anything over 3 bedrooms should come under extra scrutiny? Should we make requirements to say if it's a 1-bedroom unit, that is different than a 4-bedroom unit? Do we have to get that defined and specific? Those answers have not been answered. And again, with my colleagues, you've heard them say, the 4 of us, I feel it should be the full council to act together to make this decision. It is now not the time. So I'm going to leave it with that. I feel uncomfortable in making a decision because, number 1, I respect the community. Number 2, I respect the homeowner and their rights as well. I have yet to meet a person from Caledonia. Now, see, only one person smirked and said so, because there was one person in the audience who came at one of the meetings and said they had someone who came in from Caledonia. So I think there are benefits on both sides of the coin, and what I've heard is one size does not fit all. So I think we need to refine it even more so and come up with specifics and requirements that can be amenable to most. You're all not going to get what you want, but at least it's going to be a fair process and as we move forward. So that's the end of my comments, and with that, we'll call for a roll call. Well, did we close the, we closed?
The way the discussions are going, there will be, do we have a motion on the floor for a motion to continue?
Oh, okay, well, somebody has to make that motion.
Sure.
Through the chair, if I
Yes,
can make a
right.
suggestion to date certain here, I would suggest that for continuance, if that is the motion, to the first meeting in January,
Okay, as per Madam City Attorney, and this is based upon the recommendation, it's up to the council to accept that recommendation, that we continue this matter so that we don't push it to try to get something done before the end of the year, but to continue this matter. Hopefully that full council will be here for the first council meeting in January. Okay, so that was from the city attorney's recommendation, and I'll accept the motion to accept.
Motion to accept, moving item number 13 to January 13, 2020, in, for Chapter 5.92 to the Daly City Municipal Code and adoption of short-term rental fees.
Thank you, Councilmember Manalo. That's a first. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a first and a second. May I have a roll call, please?
Ms. DiGiovanni?
Aye.
Ms. Manalo?
Aye.
Dr. Rod?
Aye.
Mr. Sylvester?
Aye. The motion carries. All right, folks, thank you so much. Thank you, Ms. Morales. Okay. Thank you, Madam City Attorney. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Oh, you got more. Number 17. Number 17, cannabis.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're moving on. Item number 14. Sir, can we continue the meeting, please? Thank you. Item number 14, use permit UPR-7-19-14126. Mr. Palin, you have the floor, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Vice Mayor and council members. The next item before you this evening is the use permit and design review for Popeye's Louisiana Kitchen drive-through restaurant at 362 East Market Street. The project is located at the southeast corner of East Market Street and 3rd Avenue with a driveway extending to Hillside Boulevard. The proposed Popeyes will operate at the site of the previously approved Steak and Shake. A new use permit is required because a period of more than 6 months has lapsed since the cessation of the previous drive-through use. The design review is required for the proposed facade improvements. The layout of the drive-through and on-site circulation and parking would remain unchanged. The restaurant would provide seating capacity for 71 people, a drive-through queuing lane that could accommodate up to 8 cars, 24 regular parking spaces, and 3 ADA accessible spaces. The site plan remains unchanged from the previous approval. The floor plan also remains essentially the same, other than branding and color changes. The facade remodel includes a change to a more traditional design. The articulated roof lines and projecting awnings will be will be replaced with a flat roof line and stucco walls with decorative shutter elements. The ledge stone at the base of the building would be replaced with river rock. The design theme continues onto the south and east elevations. Here is a photo of the existing site view from East Market at 3rd Avenue. The facade remodel includes a change to the standing seam awnings, stucco siding, decorative shutter elements, and a river rock base. Drive-through restaurants are allowed in the PD20 zoning district with the approval of a use permit. A use permit is required because more than 6 months has lapsed since the cessation of the previous drive-through use. An updated queuing analysis for the drive-through was performed by Hexagon Traffic Consultants. The Planning Commission has reviewed the application and recommends the City Council take the following actions. Adopt the findings as outlined in the staff report, affirm the environmental assessment, and approve use permit UPR 7/19/14/126 and design review 7/19/14/127, subject to the findings and conditions outlined herein. Thank you. That concludes my presentation, and if you have any questions, I'm available.
Thank you. I need to ask a question of the city attorney, or maybe the city manager can advise. What's the distance for, maybe Ms. Tatum.
300 feet.
What's the distance? No, the distance for
Recuse.
council. I may have to recuse myself.
No, he's not close.
500 feet, I believe, within 500 feet of the.
What's 500 feet? A half of a city block?
You need to Google map it, Vice Mayor.
Google map it. Yeah, what's your address? We could Google map
I think you're okay.
659.
From where he lives.
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, what's the address of the location, Mr.
It is 362 East Market Street. It's east of
Sticking his shit.
Okay. And, that's a good idea, direction. At 362 East Market Street. That's a good idea. I didn't think about that. Yeah.
Okay.
Where is he?
It's 0.2 miles.
What's 0.2 miles?
It's 0.2 miles.
That's about 1,000 feet is what.
How many feet in a mile? 5,260?
Yeah.
5,000?
280. 5280.
5280 times 0.20, right?
Yeah, that would be 1,040 feet.
1,000.
1,040. Yeah.
You're good.
Wow, that's like a quarter. Yeah.
1,056.
Wow, that's why you're the director, Tatum. Okay, I'm good. Okay. Okay, any questions from my colleagues?
No questions. I do have a comment.
Yes.
That location has been vacant for quite some time, and so I hope that with the new operator that space could be utilized. I didn't appreciate the traffic study that was there, because I think that's one of the concerns that may arise from community members. So I appreciate that was on the study and report.
Thank you, Councilmember Manalo. Councilmember
Yeah,
Giovanni.
this one's really actually real quick. I see in the report that when Teresa Perrano, she asked about the hours being from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. and that the owner agreed to that, but in the presentation it said till midnight. So is it adopting the findings with 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. as the owner agreed to, or?
So I believe you're looking at the conditions of approval in the staff report, which says that it's to midnight, which is a requirement of the PD 20 zoning district. So that's why we place that condition. It turns out that the operator spoke at the planning commission meeting, and they have no intention of being open the full hours that the zoning district allows. So our condition is placed based on the fact that the zoning of the property specifically speaks to the operational hours being can be between, is it 6 a.m. and midnight? And that's why we place that condition following the zoning district requirements. But the operator does not intend to be open past 9.
Yeah, he said, yeah, here.
Right.
Okay, so is that going to be in a part of that, so it'll be in there when we adopt it, or does it not need to be? Yeah, it'll be midnight, but are we guaranteed that it'll be like till 10? Because I know a lot of the neighbors did express to midnight was too late. So we don't need to do that.
We don't need to do that because the
Owner will do that.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you very much. Looking forward to hopefully generating business.
Dr. Rod?
I think it's a great idea. I mean,
Yeah, thank you.
with all the chicken sandwiches that are going out nowadays, we're going to need a drive-through and an extra parking lot and I'm just joking.
I should have let Dr. Rod speak because he took the thoughts right out of my mouth. First of all, on Friday or Saturday night, when I got that hunger at 12 midnight, I can't get me a chicken sandwich. You know, after all these years, I had my first chicken sandwich this past week. Wow. As Arnold Schwarzenegger would say, I'll be back. But yes, okay, so thank you so much for the presentation. I do recall that there was an issue with the Steak and Shake, but I think the novelty wore off because they were double parked way along downside the street. But sounds very good, and I like to, kudos goes out to the Planning Commission that looked into this and before it finally came to council. Thank you very much. All right, so I have no cards on this matter, so I'd like to open the public hearing.
Nope.
And no public hearing, close the public hearing, okay? So, oh, that's communications, all right. So, on the matter, use permit UPR -7-19-14126 and design review DR-7-19-14127. Can I have a motion to accept?
Motion to accept?
First?
Second.
Second, roll call, please.
Ms. DiGiovanni?
Aye.
Ms. Manalo?
Aye.
Dr. Rod?
Aye.
Mr. Sylvester?
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you very much, Mr. Palin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is item number 15, the second reading, ordinance number 1433, adopting the 2019 California Fire Code as amended. Madam Zimmerman, would you kindly give us an overview, please?
Thank you, Vice Mayor and members of the City Council. This item came before the City Council at the last regularly scheduled City Council meeting. It is the second reading for ordinance number 1433 in adoption of the Fire Code as amended.
Any questions for our city attorney?
No.
No questions.
No questions.
Okay, great. So I'll entertain a motion to adopt the ordinance.
Motion to adopt ordinance.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember DiGiovanni. Roll call, please.
Ms. DiGiovanni?
Aye.
Ms. Manalo?
Aye.
Dr. Rod?
Aye.
Mr. Sylvester?
Aye. All right, next item is item number 16, second reading, ordinance number 1432, repealing and replacing Title 15 of the Municipal Code regarding building and related codes.
Thank you, Vice Mayor and members of the City Council. This is the second reading of the Building Code Update Ordinance Number 1432 that came before the City Council at the last regularly scheduled meeting. We'll entertain an ordinance adoption.
Okay, is there a motion?
Motion to adopt the ordinance?
Second?
First and second, roll call, please.
Ms. DiGiovanni?
Aye.
Ms. Manalo?
Aye.
Dr. Rod?
Aye.
Mr. Sylvester?
Aye. Okay, ordinance passes. Item number 17, second reading, ordinance number 1434, adopting regulations for commercial cannabis operations.
For which one?
Yeah, I'll let the city attorney.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor and members of the City Council. This is the second reading of ordinance number 1434, adopting the regulations for commercial cannabis operations. By way of background, this came before the City Council as an introduction of the ordinance at the last regularly scheduled City Council meeting. This is an introduction of ordinance for the cannabis regulations. The council may be well aware that we do have a temporary moratorium that is set to expire December 11th, 2019, and the council did have a 24-month moratorium to establish cannabis regulations. These regulations are established to authorize the city council to allow for cannabis businesses in the city of Daly City, but not until a zoning ordinance is updated to allow the specific areas that will come before the council within the next few months, and business operations will establish once those zoning regulations are established. This is the second reading, and it is up for adoption.
Thank you, Madam City Attorney. Is there any comments from the council member before? I do have some cards, and I'm going to open it up to public hearing, but I'll entertain any comments from my colleagues first. Councilmember
Vice Mayor?
DiGiovanni.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I just wanted to ask the attorney that this is what we're doing here tonight, if she would elaborate and tell the people that we're adopting this, but this does not include the overlay of the map yet, so we're not voting on that particular part of it. And if she would mind explaining that to the public, I would really appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Attorney.
Thank you, Councilmember DiGiovanni. Yes, this ordinance is basically establishing the regulations which would entail for us to come back to the City Council to establish a zoning overlay district. That particular overlay district would come up before the council and would be a public hearing, and we would establish the areas and the zones in which these businesses would be allowed. The ordinance itself does not allow for the businesses unless that ordinance overlay is established, and then the business regulations will then fall after that.
And if you would mind explaining, if we do not vote on this tonight for the moratorium, that the state itself can come in and regulate us, is that correct?
So that is correct. The current Proposition 64 that was established that you need to have local regulations in place before the year ends. And essentially what would happen is the state of California can issue permits to allow cannabis businesses in the city of Daly City, which would in essence lose some of the local control and regulations that we'd like to establish.
Thank you very much, Madam Attorney. Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Any other comments? Madam City Attorney, have you been getting calls from the state asking if we've done anything?
Yes, we have.
Okay, so they're watching. Okay, thank you. Okay, with that being said, if there's no further comments, I'd like to open up the public hearing. I do have, looks like 3 cards. I'll start off with Ms. Stella Chan, and then I have Danelle Go, and then Laura Del Castillo. Okay, Ms. Chan, welcome. Good evening.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and City Council members. My name is Stella Chow. I'm AOD Prevention Coordinator in San Mateo County Health System. There's still much to tackle in learning about the long-term effects of cannabis use and the safety of delivery methods, especially in the light of recent vaping illnesses. It is up to localities to protect the health and well-being of its community because state entities such as the Bureau of Cannabis Control has cannabis business stakeholders at the table who are making decisions about public health protections. This is something that prevention administrators warned against in other states which had passed recreational use cannabis. Over the last couple of weeks, you have heard during public comment the concerns of school officials, mental health clinicians, youth organizations, youth, the health department. These are your community's experts in youth wellness. I ask, is the council putting economic prosperity above the health of the community and its children? It is also not an equitable economic opportunity for all. With the war on drugs being harder on certain communities of color, some individuals with prior offenses are excluded from licensing. The state won't issue a commercial license if the city has a policy that will not allow it. In closing, I'll leave you with some outcomes of cannabis legalization from other states. Colorado legalized recreational use cannabis in 2013. Marijuana-related traffic deaths has more than doubled since legalization. From 2013 to 2015, cannabis-related hospitalizations rose by 55% in Colorado. In Washington state, recreational use cannabis was legalized in 2012. Cannabis-related poison control saw numbers rise by 59% from 2012 to 2015. Please reach out to me if you need any additional information from the Health Department in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Danielle Go. Oh, thank you.
Good evening, Vice Mayor and City Council members. Thank you for your time to speak. My name is Danelle Go, and I'm a staff member of the Daly City Prevention Collaborative, a program of the Japanese Community Youth Council on substance abuse prevention programming for youth in Daly City. I'm here to further talk about the impacts of allowing cannabis retailers to open up in our community. In the ordinance, it states that, quote, City Council desires to provide for their licensing and regulation to protect the public health, safety, and general welfare of the citizens of the city. And in the past City Council meeting, it was demonstrated that as council members, that you all showed your understanding of the concerns that many community members had on this topic. After the City Council meeting, the youth that spoke, they stated to our staff that it meant a lot to them that you acknowledge their concern and care for their community, their peers at school, and others who are impacted. And we all really hope that shows in your decision making. These youth, they see you, they hear you, and they believe in all of you to protect them and help build a bright and healthy future for them. If it is your intent to not just encourage economic growth and job creation, but to really protect the health, the public's health, safety, and welfare of the residents in the city, then I believe that all the speakers from the past meetings, such as the wellness coordinator, principal, 2 youth, prevention educators and providers, county staff, a representative from the Daly City Youth Health Center, and a lot of other people, they should definitely be heard for their truths. We are the ones that are living, experiencing, and seeing what our community is going through and what impacts cannabis retailers will have on our community and their health. So therefore, as decision makers for the city, prioritize the health and welfare of your people, as they are the ones who would be even contributing to the economic growth of this city. So there's this saying that health is wealth. But in this case, the intent for potential wealth, so meaning bringing in cannabis retailers to the city, shouldn't really compromise our community's health. So, thank you.
Thank you. And then we have a Laura Del Castillo. Good evening.
Good evening, Council. My name is Laura Del Castillo. I'm from Eden Enterprises, which is a vertically integrated cannabis company, and we've got operations around the Bay Area. And I would just like to voice my support for this ordinance. We strongly believe that regulating cannabis is really necessary to addressing black market proliferation. And we also think that it has a lot of benefits, not least of which is local access to clean and tested cannabis in the case of retailers. I understand the local concerns, but the fact of the matter is that cannabis is here, and the state actually already allows deliveries into cities and counties regardless of local regulation. So as other jurisdictions are starting to realize, it's important to regulate and also try and capture some of that revenue within the city limits. So I hope you'll approve this ordinance, and I would also like to thank staff for their time on this.
Thank you. All right, we have no further cards on this. Okay. Being I have no further cards, any additional comments from my colleagues before we call for the vote?
I do have a comment.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Given the quandary that we're at, because of the moratorium given upon us, the deadline of December 11, we would then have to succumb to kind of the state regulations. I think in the earnest of hearing the community input that was stated prior to this meeting and also today, I'm inclined to support the ordinance, knowing the fact that we would be able to have that local control. If we didn't move forward with this, therefore the state would have the authority to therefore move upon kind of that jurisdiction. So with that, Mr. Vice Mayor, that's the rationale with my decision, and I move to adopt the ordinance number 1434, the regulations for commercial cannabis operations as, and that's my rationale.
Councilmember DeGiovanni.
Yes, given the moratorium, but because there are a lot of questions that I have, but I can do that, I'm sure, at the time, Madam Attorney, when we do the overlay, as far as different regulations, because there's certain things, if this was adopted just as normal, then probably won't, but we'll be able to guide this afterwards, so not necessarily everything in here would be applicable, not unless we can change it as the overlay comes in front of us. Like, it's possible, if we have enough with the preschools and things like that, that there may not be any around in our neighborhoods. With the overlay, yeah, depending on the overlay.
The overlay district would establish the zoning regulations, which
Correct.
would determine where these businesses would
Correct.
be.
So there might be enough to where the concerns of where the youth were, to where they didn't even want it accessible in their neighborhoods, that could be a possibility.
That could be a
Okay.
possibility.
Okay,
That's
thank you. But given that we have a moratorium and a deadline, that I have to agree that we have to pass this tonight. Thank you very much. Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Rod, anything?
Yes, I do. I think it's important for us to have some sort of local control over the regulation of commercial sale cannabis. One thing I haven't heard is the history of the prohibition of cannabis. Like, what was the reason behind this being illegal? And to provide some historical background, it was also to demonize people of color. And it became marijuana, right? It demonized black jazz musicians. So I think when we think about it, alcohol was prohibited, but it was regulated. And I think we're in an important piece of time right now. If we understand why this history of prohibition began with in the first place, then this won't be an issue. But we are in this sensitive issue, and I think that it's important to have an overlay zone that is fair to schools, fair to youth, because I feel that cannabis is a form of medicine for a lot of people. I've had friends that have had cancer. I've had people that don't want to take over-the-counter medicines. And I think, to miss this opportunity just to provide medicine in a way that is locally controlled away from schools is something that I'm for.
Thank you, Dr. Rod. Every time I hear you speak, I kind of look at you because I yearn for more. I get a history lesson.
You can enroll at Skyline College.
I mean, that's good because I've always said, what about all these other things and prohibition and alcohol and prostitution and tobacco. And if you continue to outlaw these items, as one of the speakers said, it's going to become black market and folks are going to find some way to do it. And what's also part of SB, I think it's SB 64 it was, that you can also grow it at home. So how are you going to protect the kids if you got folks growing it at home? And then there's the recreational aspect, which we haven't decided on. And as Dr. Rod mentioned, there's the medical aspect that we have not decided on. We need to decide on something because the voters passed it. But we have to keep our community in mind, and especially to protect our children, and come up with something that is palatable, whether to include preschools, schools. I originally started off the conversation and say I want 1,000 feet from schools, churches, and banks. That really cuts it down. But this is something that we're going to get more into at this particular time. But we have to do something, or if we don't, the state will. All right, that's my comment. So with that being said, we'll call for the vote. I'm sorry, who made the motion?
Jocelyn?
Jocelyn did.
Councilmember, that's right. Councilmember Manalo, is there a second on Councilmember Manalo to move ahead with Ordinance 1434, adopting the regulations for commercial cannabis operations?
Second.
We have a second. Okay, may I have a roll call, please?
Ms. DiGiovanni?
Aye.
Ms. Manalo?
Aye.
Dr. Rod?
Aye.
Mr. Sylvester?
Aye. Thank you, Madam City Attorney.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is public appearances and oral communications, and we do have one card. Ms. Christine Fuller, come on down, Christine. Good evening.
Good evening, Honorable Vice Mayor Glenn Sylvester, City Council, and staff. I'm here to say happy Thanksgiving to the City of Daly City, my elected officials, the City Manager's Office, the Police Department, every single department who works diligently for me as the public. Yes, I'm a former commissioner of 12 years. Glenn is fully aware, since you took my seat, how it was, but I just wanted to come and say it's Thanksgiving week and I wanted to thank everyone. On the contrary, I do have some things that I need to get off my mind. As elected officials or just, human beings, we all are unique and we all handle situations differently. And there's been a couple of incidents where I've personally been involved as a public member. There's some people who I don't know that are new to our city that I kind of have to force myself and introduce myself to. So there's a lot of fresh faces and a lot of new people that, especially on the commissions, we don't really know. As public, I don't know them. But when we are in public, I would definitely, and I am invited to a lot as a former commissioner, and I've been here my entire life, but there are some boundaries that should not be crossed. Pictures are pictures. That could be sustained as a memory. But when, I don't know how I can eloquently say it, but I think we just all need to be mindful of each other's space and, respect one another a little bit more with tact, grace, equity for our people, and just be a little bit more humble. And the reason why I'm saying it is because my name almost ended up in the press for somebody else's actions. And you can say anything you'd like to me, but you will never raise your hand to me. So I'm just gonna say, on this Thanksgiving, I'm a very forgiving person, but I want people to be more mindful of their actions.
All right, thank you, Ms. Fuller. I have no further cards at this time. Next item is appointments. Any appointments? Boards, commissions? All right, hearing none, I'm moving on to report. Council committee reports. Council committee meetings between November 12th through the 24th. Any one of my colleagues? Madam Manalo.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I just wanted to report that I did go to the Bosca meeting last Thursday, and that at those meetings, they do report on our status of water. Obviously, precipitation has been low, and actually right now, we do have adequate water supply, given the fact that we haven't had a lot of precipitation. So that's good news because we had a lot of rain from last year. That's what I wanted to point out, but it looks like we're going to have some rain down the pipeline. There is a project that was approved around a pilot project and bringing water all the way from the East Bay to route it all the way to Hayward. They're looking at ways to see how you can transport water to other entities. We don't have a problem because for us, we're very lucky that we're en route towards San Francisco, and so our water comes from the Hetch Hetchy. But this is just wanted to inform everyone that we're looking at, or BOSCA as an organization is looking at ways to transport water in emergencies or so. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Nalo. It kind of raises a question. I remember that the city of East Palo Alto had to buy their water because Mountain View had too much. So thank you for that. That's very useful information. Water is a very precious commodity. Okay, Councilmember DiGiovanni.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I attended the commute.org. So what they primarily are about public transportation, and they report that their shuttle ridership has increased, which is great. One reason being that their employment of their drivers is now part of the Teamsters, and they're paying $24 an hour. So if anybody's looking for a job, they are still hiring, and it's increasing across our San Mateo County. And also the Samtrans is asking people to chime in and see what they would like to see. They're starting another campaign. So I'll be bringing that information at the next council meeting, so that you guys can actually chime in online and let them know what you think, how they could change their routes, and they're very serious about it. So it sounds like they're actually going to be able to do something this time and take everyone into consideration for our public transit. And they're looking into possibly doing streamlining with the one card system. So that's been an issue ongoing. I know that our vice mayor had been serving as well, and that had never been addressed. And that is a good thing, because we need to streamline so that people don't have to carry more than one card when they travel across to go from BART to Caltrains to wherever they have to go. So that's it. Thank you. Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember DiGiovanni. I do recall being part of that committee, and your update is very, very important. Part of what you said was the shuttle service.
Yes.
And if you don't use it, we will lose it.
That's true.
And that's in the Bay Shore. The folks in the Bay Shore need the shuttles, and they monitor who is riding those shuttles.
Yeah.
So please use those shuttles. The card aspect is an outstanding idea. BART, Caltrans, you should only use one card. Why can't we all get together? That's outstanding. And then last year I made mention, they need shuttle drivers, and you can even work part-time. So if they're part of the Teamsters, it's union, and it's good wages. So if you're interested in the job, drive a shuttle part-time, and very good. I like that. Very good. Okay, anybody else? Dr. Rod?
I don't.
Okay, I have nothing at this time. All right, next, was it City Council? All the events we went to. I know there's a whole bunch.
I just recall one. I was able to go with Dr. Rod Desmagbal and Pamela DiGiovanni to Ben Franklin. They had a color run. Yeah, and it was just great to see that young people getting involved in physical education and really taking their health in that manner. It brought me back to being at my old middle school. I was very thankful my gym teacher remembered me. But it's been a long time ago, but it was great to see young people getting active, and so it was a great time with the PTA there at Ben Franklin. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam Manalo. Any more? Councilmember
I believe
DiGiovanni.
Councilmember Manalo and myself, we attended the Mike Nevin Way, where they redid the beautification area, which is the walkway over to the Colma, and had been pretty destroyed for a while. It was named Mike Nevin in 2001, we heard, so the family was there. It turned out to be a beautiful day, and the county had made sure, that Supervisor Canepa made sure that it's going to be an ongoing, that they meet and make sure that we well taken care of, because there was a homeless encampment, and they didn't just move the homeless, they provided resources for the homeless. So I thought that that was a great thing to hear as well. So there were several people in attendance, but that was a beautiful thing that we attended. Thank you.
Mr. Vice Mayor, may I
Yes.
add on to that? I think that was a really special event that brought community together, but it also talked about how to ensure a place that was really, it was dark, it had no light, but desolate, but really a pathway to Colma BART Station. And so if you walk by there, it was utilized a lot, but now when you pass by there, there's light. They really cleaned it up, and so I think it's around supporting projects like that. Although it's not in our city, it's in our neighboring city. It's important that we continue to have safe and clean places of passageways, especially to transit, so.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, one more. Because our chief and the police department, the staff, HR, and many departments, wastewater, they served our volunteers for their volunteer at Dolgers. And it was a beautiful day at Dolgers, as always, with all the many hours. And then it was great to see all the staff out there helping, and also in recreation and library, they all volunteered as well. So thousands and thousands of hours. So I want to thank our PD and our chief for serving Christensen and Gammas and their fire department and everyone, and HR. Thank you very much.
Dr. Rod?
I just want to echo Councilwoman Justin Manalo about the run-a-thon or the
It
jog.
was fun.
I got to go to, so Jocelyn's PE teacher is my daughter's PE coach, and I got to do a little coaching for my daughter to finish strong.
I remember.
He's like, she got embarrassed, but you know, what are dads for? Also, an event that we all attended this past weekend was a beautiful day on Saturday, and then the staff as well, for Tita Erlinda Tianco Galeon, who was a former library board trustee. We renamed the park, the kid, I forgot what it was, Altaloma Park in her name. And I just mentioned how important it is to have people that look like me in spaces that, we've always been fighting for different spaces, and it's important to have representation for young people to see themselves in public spaces.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
All right, great. Anything else?
It was a beautiful day with her family, and thank you, Dr. Rod, for bringing that up, around being able to honor such an amazing woman who gave selflessly to the community for so many years. So thank you.
All right, thank you. At this particular time, we do have, staff. Anything from staff? Thank you, Ms. Malpe. I'm sorry about that. At this time, we're going to adjourn in memory, and I'll turn it over to Councilmember Manalo.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. This evening, I'd like to adjourn in memory, and I'd like to read something from the family who's here today. Alexis, her brother, beautiful brother who had gone to the Lord. And in memoriam of him, I'd like to read his biography, Mr. Vice Mayor. I want to be successful. I want to try my best. I want to work hard so I can show something for myself, Junior. These are all the words Junior shared a few days before his passing. These are the words that he lived out even until the last moments of his life. Federico Dairit David was born on July 25th, 2002 in Concepcion, Tarlac in the Philippines. As a young child, Junior would light up the room when he entered because of his unapologetic charisma, contagious joy, and sense of humor. Early in his life, he was diagnosed with C1q nephropathy, a kidney disease that started his relationship with hospital stays, treatment, medication, and a level of caution throughout his childhood. His diagnosis never hindered his will to push through difficult times with positivity and grit. His health condition never stopped him from living his life on his own terms. In 2012, Junior immigrated to the United States at age 11. He attended the 5th and 6th grade at Bessie Carmichael Filipino Education Center in San Francisco's Filipino Cultural District, Soma, Pilipinas. He attended the Galing Bata after-school program that helped affirm his identity and sense of place. He then moved to American Canyon in the 7th grade and attended American Canyon Middle School. It was in the 8th grade he was able to return to his beloved birthplace, Barangay Balutu, Tarlac, Philippines, where he was reunited with his friends, family, and all his favorite foods. However, his kidneys began to require more specialized attention. That is when the family decided that it was best to move back to the United States to receive more appropriate medical care. After returning to the U.S. in 2017, he began high school at Jefferson High School in Daly City. There, he would meet his dearest and closest friends. Many of his teachers shared the kind nature that he filled the room with. They also acknowledged his sense of humor and energy he brought to the class. Despite Junior's setbacks in school due to his health, he continued to persist in his work through independent home studies. He was on the honor roll last year as a sophomore. By junior year, he was concurrently enrolled during his junior year at Jefferson High School and Marie Wattis School in UCSF when he was diagnosed with hemophagocytic lymphocystitis, HAHLH, in November 2018. In the summer of 2019, Junior fought through an intense HLH flare-up and became stable enough to be released from an extended hospital stay in the week of his 17th birthday. Per his wishes, the family celebrated with him on a family trip to Santa Cruz. The family holds his trip close to their hearts because they saw Junior, the teenager, the sibling, the uncle himself. Junior instilled a confidence in them that made us believe he would fight and survive with the kind of tenacity it took to beat his many rounds against HLH. In late August, he returned to the hospital to fight HLH again. On 11/15/2019 was his sunset. On Junior's final day, he transitioned from here to heaven at 1:41 p.m., surrounded by family and so much love it turned the room warm. He fought a courageous fight for a year, and the journey was triumphant. He never gave up and danced miracles all around the family, even until his last breath. In his sister's eyes, he won. He won through his determination to live his own life on his own terms and timeline. He won through speaking and acting from a place of courage in the face of desperation. He won with his charisma, humor, kindness, and compassion towards people, especially those he loved. He is one of her greatest teachers, and her gratitude runs deep for him. By being by his side during his transition was being alongside someone as they were in labor, birthing an unknown beginning. In a sense, he was a new beginning that allows him to expand beyond what we know and live a life without boundaries. He transitions at the age of 17 years old on Earthside. Rest in love, Federico David Calugran Daca Jr. He loved playing basketball, telling jokes, hanging out with friends, and loved eating food, especially fried chicken. He especially loved his friends and family. He was patient and kind, a loving uncle to his nieces and nephews. He always demonstrated poise, kindness, and respect to all those he crossed paths with. He was a warrior and will always be remembered as one. Junior leaves behind his parents, Federico P. David Jr. and Jinky Dyrit, Frederick R. David, Alexis A. David, Arlene M. David, Adrian P. David, Jasmine N. David, and Kate Ella Dyrit Doherty. Grandparents Teresita Dyrit and Orlando Dyrit Jr. The families in the audience today, and hearing the beauty and the love and the determination of such a beautiful spirit and soul was such an inspiration to continue to keep fighting for and believing and really having that faith. So in his honor, Mr. Vice Mayor, I'd like to adjourn in Federico David's Calurgan Dacas Jr.'s memory.
Okay, go ahead, Councilmember DiGiovanni.
I want to say how beautiful that was, and I know that and this is not, out of respect, I wouldn't say that stories that weren't true, but they spoke at the services, and that was very beautiful. And your family, they said even up until 2 days prior to his passing, that he wanted to return to school. And that he also had a whiteboard, that he actually had control, as you said, all the way up until the end, giving direction and giving what he wanted, FaceTiming with his mom, FaceTiming with his sister, and he had, that is incredible young man. And the Warriors actually honored him by giving him messages as well, because he was the warrior. And I thank Councilmember Manalo for eloquently speaking about him as well, with the little buttons that we have with his picture on it.
Thank you, Councilmember DiGiovanni. Dr. Rod, anything?
I love your family.
Yeah.
All right. Hardly ever does the family appear here in the audience when there's an adjourned in memory.
Beautiful.
Please accept our sincere condolences at this particular time, and we're going to do something different today. What I'd like to do is pause for a moment of silence before we adjourn. All right, this meeting is now adjourned. Thank you very much.